What's going on, YouTube? Metal Complex here, and welcome to episode 6 of my Saturday series, The Quest for the Perfect Budget Knife. If you're new to my channel, I like to do knife reviews, knife overviews, unboxings, discussion topics. I like to do this series on Saturdays, and I have a Knife Guy series on Sundays. I also like to give a lot of stuff away. I like to upload every single day, so if you like daily knife content, this might be the channel for you. So go ahead and hit subscribe. Make sure your notifications are set to all because there's definitely more content coming. If you're new to this series, I would suggest you go back and start with episode 1 so you can kind of understand how I arrived at the conclusions that I've arrived at, for this video. I'll give you guys a glance at the episode list here, everything we've gone over and where we're at. We've done 1 through 5, and today we're going to be talking about blade shape and grind. The idea with this series is to hypothetically create what I would consider to be the very best budget knife that could exist. Now, obviously my own bias and tastes go into it, but the idea here is to create a budget knife that would cater to as many different people as possible. So a lot of people are like, what about slip joints? A lot of people are like, what about hard use situations? A lot of us have, or most of us have widely varying stuff that we do with our knives. And so while I couldn't hypothetically create, with this entire series, I couldn't hypothetically create one knife that could do everything, but I could probably create a, hypothetically a model that would cater to as many people as possible. What's the point? Well, with a budget knife, we get, these budget knife designs that we're seeing here, in the knife world right now, are allowing more and more people to get their hands on examples of really good knives. Now, I love some of the amazing budget models that I've experienced, but I don't quite think that the perfect budget knife exists yet. This series is largely based off how much I love the Ontario Rat 1. They did a lot of stuff right with it, but there were a whole bunch of things that I felt like they could have done better. And so that's kind of the idea with this series. A lot of you might be wondering, how are you defining budget? Because that's different for every single person. Price is actually episode 10, so while I am going to go ahead and define that for you, just hold all complaints until episode 10 when I actually talk about price and bring some light to it. For the sake of making as many different points as I possibly can, or talking about as many different things from a manufacturing standpoint as I can, I'm not somebody who makes stuff like this, but I have to assume, extra details cost more money. I'm going to assume everything under $100 hypothetically would be budget. So we're going to kind of talk about things you could expect within that price range. Today, like I said, we're going to be talking about blade shape. Now, a lot of different people love a lot of different types of blades for a lot of different reasons. We cannot help that we are aesthetically attracted to certain blade shapes despite knowing that certain blades are just better at some things than others. So this knife is being created from a utilitarian standpoint. While I can't stop myself from being attracted to certain things, I'm trying to shut that out and create a tool, something that helps people get a job done and is simply a tool. So we're going to be thinking about it like that. I'll go over a whole bunch of knives here that are in the budget category. There's a few up here that are not, but I'll be talking about these and using them as examples. By the way, each one of these, or most of these budget knives, were actually lent to me by an awesome channel called Neves Knives. If you get a chance, or if you want to pause this video right now and go over and subscribe to them, you can find a link to their channel in the description of this video, and also I'll pin a comment with their channel right at the top so you can easily find them. Definitely worth it. Awesome people. So thank you very much, Neves Knives, for doing that for me. Also, if I pick something up and you're like, I'm interested in that, I will try to provide an Amazon affiliate link that you can use in the description to purchase the knife. Let's start off here. I'm not going to get too caught up on the names on the models here. We're really just going to be talking about the blades. This is a Kuby here, and what we're seeing is kind of a Persian style sort of sweeping blade here with a lot of belly, very long and slender. This is actually a budget knife. You can check that out for yourself if you want to. As far as the blade shape goes, we've got a pretty prominent swedge, very, not a super thick blade stock, probably about 125 thousandths, but there's not a lot of room to drop towards the edge. This type of blade is going to excel at puncture style tasks. It's going to cut, certainly, but is it going to be the ultimate slicer? No. I think it's going to be good at certain things. It's not going to be the very best at a whole bunch of different things. But I mean, that's not necessarily the goal here. It's just I want a blade that's going to do everything that I would ask of it pretty well. Doesn't have to be the best at anything. In fact, it probably won't be the best at anything. It just needs to do what I'm going to use it for. Anything from regular office carry, EDC tasks, all the way up to maybe I'd use it outside on a construction site or something like that, you know, within reason. No heavy prying or trying to jam it in the side of a building so I can scale it. You guys know what I mean. There's another blade shape. I like this one better than the first one. You know, it's only about 125 thousandths likely. It's got a flat here that carries out to a reasonable point on the blade, maintaining some good strength. You've got a swedge that's not too prominent, but still makes that tip functional, good at puncturing. You've got more room to drop towards the cutting edge. So what you end up with the same thickness is a blade that at the edge is much thinner, much more capable. So we're emphasizing a little bit more strength, a little bit better cutting performance. This is a very, very good blade shape. You know what it reminds me of is the Gale Bradley from Spyderco. Really, really good blade shape. Thumb stud's in the right place. If you remember correctly from previous episodes, I've talked about ergonomics, the fact that I would want a thumb stud so that it can double as an external stop pin, emphasizing additional strength where if we would be putting some lateral force on our blade, we're at least protected there a little bit. We've added a little bit of resiliency to the blade, you know, even though I wouldn't recommend putting lateral force on the blade, it's there. So strength is important to me. The only thing I don't like about this blade is its recurve. Now I understand the benefits of a recurve, but recurves are a little difficult to sharpen. And while there's a lot of you out there who are proficient in sharpening, the vast majority of us are not, including myself. And remember, we're trying to cater to the everyman, the vast majority of people, you know, guys and gals who just want to, you know, put some money into a knife, a reasonable amount of money, take it out and use it and make it be as convenient as possible, as low maintenance as possible. So a recurve is probably not going to be the way to go. How about a Tanto? In this case, we've got serrations. I'll tell you right now, don't want to do serrations. Serrations are definitely beneficial in certain situations, but once they go dull, again, the vast majority of people are not going to be able to bring those back to life. They're going to have to send the knife in, which, you know, then they're going to be without it. Nope, don't want that. I want a blade that's basic sharpening skills, or basically somebody who just has the time to go watch a 30-minute video on YouTube about the basics of sharpening. I want a blade that's going to cater to those people. Now, Tanto's great at puncture tasks. It's got two separate edges, so you could use one edge as a scraper tip and a scraper edge and one edge as the cutting edge, and that's great. I like that. Tantos are also notoriously strong. However, Tantos also have generally a flat edge, and since there's not continuous curvature, it kind of you know, creates a little bit of a hang-up sometimes in the material that you're cutting. So, you know, while emphasizing additional strength and puncturability in your blade is good, I'm not sure that I want those qualities over the knife's general ability to cut or slice efficiently. I think we might be emphasizing the wrong traits there, but again, that's just my opinion. How about something like a, this is the Gerber Flatiron. How about something like this? Something that's cleaver style blade. Definitely emphasized strength here. We've got lots of room to drop down to a cutting edge, despite this being a thicker blade. I don't know about the Flatiron, but a blade shape like this certainly does have the potential to be slicey. See, in this situation, we have too little puncturability. I still want the ability to be able to puncture with my blades, and while I can still get into packages here, I still want a tip. You know, not having a tip means you're probably not going to be able to break what would be the tip of this knife off. Strength is, like I said, certainly emphasized, but I still want to be able to poke into stuff and cut. You know, I want to be able to do that. That's not the most efficient blade shape for that. How about a combination of kind of a drop point, kind of a sheep's foot? This is a really good blade shape. You know, I can't say that this wouldn't work. Absolutely. This is the Kershaw Bareknuckle. Reviewed it on Friday or Thursday. I can't remember. It's great. Great design. You've got a reasonable amount of flat, carrying a 125,000 stock thick blade, you know, out to, or the thickness, the full thickness of that out to about 55-60%. Then you've got a swedge up top, not too prominent, comes down to a pretty pokey tip. You've got some belly, nothing in the cutting path. Remember, Ideally, the thumb studs would be far enough back to act as a bracing lug, like on the Hinder XM18 here. I would want that. You know, it's not in the cutting path. You know, there's a choil here, which we talked about in ergonomics. I would want a forward choil for both my large and small models, so people can get their hands all the way around despite their, you know, hand size or issues with legality and blade length in their area. That solves all those problems, at least in my book. So nothing in the cutting path there on this one. If it had thumb studs and they were back here, there wouldn't be anything in the cutting path. It's going to be slicey, going to be pokey. This is a good blade shape, you know. I don't necessarily have anything against this blade shape. I think this is a non-traditional sheep's foot, and a lot of people would say it's not really a sheep's foot. But for the sake of moving on here, I'm going to call this a sheep's foot, even though I know it's not quite that, and say that I want a little bit more of a traditional tip on my knives than what a sheep's foot has to offer. A little more puncturability, keep the same amount of sliciness. Kershaw Thermite definitely has that classic drop point blade look. This is a Rick Hinder design, so you can see there he's added a little bit of his Spyderco in there. That means that you get the tip, and because of the grind, it's a partially compound ground blade, you get a really strong tip that can puncture and can slice. This one has more of a straight edge, but the same grind with the curvature in the belly. Honestly, I really like this. On a budget knife, I think this is an awesome grind because you can go super thin, and you definitely have additional durability in that tip over a blade that is not ground the same way and does not maintain the same amount of thickness out to the tip. You can see there, both of these knives are about the same thickness, but the Thermite certainly has a stronger tip. This is absolutely a candidate for a blade shape that I'd want on there. I can never remember the name of this one. This is more of a Tanto, but it's not really. It just kind of has that Tanto-y look. In fact, it's not at all. But again, it's kind of the same thing. Really good looking. Now, the only problem is the additional machining to make that happen. And if we're trying to create a budget knife, you know, capability, maxing out the blade's capability in as many different directions as possible while keeping the cost minimized is very important. Now, like I said, I don't manufacture knives. I don't machine things on a regular basis. I don't know what it costs, but I know that a more simple blade is simply going to be easier to make. This depends on what it's made out of, but if two blades made out of D2 steel that are both, you know, the same type of profile and the same starting thickness, if you put more machine work into one to create a compound grind than on the other, which is just a simple flat grind, it's going to cost more money, at least in maintenance on your machines, than the one that's just a simple flat grind. That's just the way that it is, right? So that's the only problem with that, is it might add a little bit of cost. It might be just minuscule, but if we're trying to make every dollar count, it might be really important. This is a new CRKT design, the Fast Lane. I haven't reviewed this one yet. Really like that blade shape. Nice belly, nice drop down to a very thin edge. Almost too much puncturability there. You can see how fine that comes. If I'm going to be using this knife outside in some hard use situations, I might want a little bit more strength in that tip. FH12, Gonzo FH12. You get the strength down here, 100, again, about 125 thousandths, maybe 135. Strength carried out to the tip because that flat runs way out here. Not a lot of room to drop down towards the edge, but this is really good. Belly, we've got strength, we've got a decent amount of room to drop, we've got puncturability, nothing in the cutting path. Pretty good example. I always forget the name of this guy as well, but another fantastic example. This one, the flat, I mean, definitely in terms of strength down to the tip, you know, we got it. We might have too much of a flat here, too much strength being emphasized, not enough room to drop towards the edge. Still gets nice and sharp, but man, that's going to be a good working blade. Straightforward. There's a reason here. I'm going for ultra simplicity, and there's a reason that the drop point blade is so popular from a utilitarian standpoint. It just does a lot of stuff efficiently, right? Now, this whole series is based on my love of the Rat. And the Rat has one of the best working blades out there. You know, I mean, it's not like this is just the Rat's blade. It's a fully flat ground blade, and it's drop points, pretty common. You have some nice cutting belly. You've got, for the Rat, You've got thickness maintained out to a reasonable point on the tip, though it does get a little bit thin. So I mean, I've seen videos where people break the tip off this knife. Nothing in the cutting path. That's partially because the cutting path starts way up here. But imagine with me, this area is a choil. We move this thumb stud back a little bit. Maybe we could even add a little bit more blade in there. And you've still got nothing in the cutting path. You're able to choke up without having to deal with this area that's not a choil here. And then you've got a blade that's got a good amount of strength, that's going to be proficient at slicing and cutting. It's going to be proficient at puncture tasks, and it's not going to slow you down. That's a blade shape that you can get out, you can use it, and not have to mess around with it. It's not going to slow you down. I love this knife for that reason. I love it. Now, it's not absolutely perfect though, because it doesn't have some of those other traits that we've talked about in previous episodes. Another great example of a fantastic blade shape. Now, this is not a budget knife, but oh my goodness, did Hogue and Doug Ritter nail this. Well, Doug Ritter, this is his blade. It's made by Hogue, the RSK MK1 G2. KnifeWorks exclusive. People always ask me, where do you get that? It's a KnifeWorks exclusive. We have a flat, there's a thumb ramp here, so you can get your finger locked in behind that blade. Only 125 thousandths, but it maintains a good amount of strength down to the tip. Lots of room to cut to drop down to a super slicey edge. You can see there I've been using this. I love this blade. Thumb studs get a little bit in the cutting path. If they were external stop pins, it'd be a little easier, but there's a lot of other problems that are involved with that, like where they're positioned when you're deploying it. All hypothetical. But this blade's really close. Very, very good blade shape. The other blade shape that I just love, and the Shamon has so many features that I love. Now, I would love to try and work in the hole on my hypothetical budget blade, but the spider hole works better than any slot that any other company has tried to create for lack of being able to actually use the hole, because for those of you who don't know, Spyderco dictates who can use that exact hole. Everybody else has to use rectangles and triangles and weird. They can't actually use the Spidey hole. That's Spyderco's thing. We have a very tall blade with a little bit of a flat carrying what's about 145,000 stock thick blade. The strength of that, the robustness, tapering down to a tip that is both strong and able to efficiently puncture. You have so much room to drop towards a cutting edge that this really pretty thick blade comes down to a reasonable edge. You also have nothing in the cutting path and an amazing choke-up point that doubles as just ergonomic freedom. The reason that I love the Shamon so much is because it has so many of the elements that I've talked about in this series, right? The ergonomics that I like, the contouring, the manipulation, a strong lock. It's got a, not a fully flat ground blade, but nearly, it comes down to a nice cutting edge, nice tip, it's strong, great. Ideally, I think the best blade shape that would cater to the most people, that would be the least expensive to make. It may not be everybody's #1 aesthetic choice, and it may not be the very best blade for every single task you could possibly throw at it, but guys, I think the best answer is honestly the most boring one. I think the best blade shape's already been done, and it's been being done for a long time. It's a drop point blade somewhere around here. It's somewhere, it's a mix of the Rat, the Shamon, and the Ritter. I want that thumb ramp on the Ritter. I want the choil of the Shamon. I might want a little bit of the flat of either the Ritter or the Shamon. I might want a blade that's a little thicker than the Rat, but not quite as thick as the Shamon. I like the height of the Shamon blade so you can get down to a good cutting edge. I want that belly. I want that tip. That's the type of blade that's going to do pretty good at just about everything, and I've got more experience with drop point blades than anything else, but it's pretty easy for me to say that that's kind of the blade shape that I prefer. I think that's about all I can say. I hope you guys are kind of in line with my reasoning, and if you disagree with me, that's okay, but I hope that you can at least, understand how I arrived at this point. Like I always say, this series is not meant to bend people to think exactly like me. I hope people take this series and they kind of understand like how I approach it, and then they can take that approach and apply it to their own line of thinking, But that's going to be pretty much it for today's episode, guys. I hope you found it at least mildly entertaining. If you did, please leave a like. Like I said, if any of these knives interest you and you want to support my channel, you can find my Amazon affiliate links down in the description and get one for yourself. If you'd like to check out my other content, I do, of course, have lots of videos of knives that are either expensive or inexpensive that I don't like, so check those out. And if you enjoy all my content, click on this Metal Complex logo right here and subscribe to my channel because there's definitely more coming. Thanks again for watching, everybody, and have a great day.